Dog was chained for 7 years and attacked all humans. But when this man approached him, tears, Alex Martinez stood in his kitchen, stirring honey into his morning tea when his phone buzzed. The caller ID showed Animal Control Linda. His heart quickened. Linda only called for the most challenging cases. "We've got a situation, Alex." Linda's voice was tight with concern. "Remember that property on Old Mill Road we've been watching? The owner finally got evicted, but they left behind a dog. He's been there his whole life, about 7 years, on a heavy chain. We need your expertise on this one." Alex grabbed his rescue kit while Linda filled him in. The dog, a large gray mixed breed they were calling Gray, had shown extreme aggression toward the animal control officers who'd attempted to approach him. The chain was so embedded in the ground that they couldn't cut him free without getting close, and no one could get within 10 feet without triggering fierce lunging and barking. Driving through the autumn morning, Alex reflected on his 15 years of rehabilitating traumatized dogs. Each case was unique, but dogs who had spent their entire lives chained presented special challenges. They often developed deep psychological wounds alongside their physical ones. The property came into view, a dilapidated house with an overgrown yard. Linda's animal control van was parked at a safe distance, and she stood waiting for him, her face drawn with worry. "He's around back," she said quietly. "We've tried everything: treats, squeezed cheese, even meat. He's not interested in food, just wants to keep everyone away." The neighbors said they never saw anyone interact with him, just throw food over the fence occasionally. Alex nodded, gathering his thoughts. "Let me observe him for a while before we make any moves. Sometimes the key is in the small details." They walked carefully to where they could see the backyard. There, in a bare patch of earth worn smooth by years of pacing, stood Gray. The dog's coat was a dull gray, matted in places, with patches of bare skin showing through. His chain, thick and rusty, disappeared into the ground near an old oak tree. What struck Alex most were Gray's eyes. They weren't filled with hatred or aggression, but with something far more complex: fear, confusion, and a deep, soul-crushing exhaustion. "How long has he been without food or water?" Alex asked softly. "Neighbors have been throwing kibble over the fence since the owners left 3 days ago. There's a dirty water bowl just within his reach." Alex settled onto the ground, deliberately positioning himself where Gray could see him clearly but at a distance that didn't trigger defensive behavior. He needed to understand this dog's language before attempting any intervention. "I'll need some time alone with him," he told Linda. "Could you move the van out of sight? The official presence might be adding to his stress." Linda nodded, understanding. She'd worked with Alex enough times to trust his methods, even if they sometimes seemed unconventional. "I'll check back in 2 hours. Call if you need anything sooner." As Linda's van disappeared down the gravel driveway, Alex began the delicate process of reading Gray's body language. Every slight movement, every shift in ear position, every subtle change in his stance told a story. The dog watched him intently, muscles tense but no longer actively threatening. Alex noticed how Gray's aggression seemed most pronounced when anyone moved toward his right side, probably from years of dodging kicks or other abuse from that direction. "You've had it rough, haven't you, boy?" Alex spoke softly, not expecting a response but wanting Gray to get used to his voice. 7 years is a long time to be alone, but that's going to change today. The autumn sun climbed higher as Alex maintained his quiet vigil. He'd positioned himself cross-legged on the ground, occasionally shifting his posture but never making sudden movements. For the first hour, he simply narrated his actions in a calm, steady voice. "I'm just going to move my hand now, Gray. See? Nothing scary about that. Just stretching a bit." Each movement was telegraphed, each action explained. Gradually, Gray's constant growling subsided to occasional rumbles. Alex noticed how the dog's chain had worn a circular groove in the dirt. 7 years of pacing the same path, day after day. The sight made his throat tighten. The chain itself was cruel enough, but the complete isolation, the lack of any positive human contact, that was the deeper wound they needed to heal. Around mid-morning, Alex slowly reached into his pocket and removed a small paper bag. Gray immediately tensed, his hackles rising. "It's okay, buddy. I'm just having my breakfast. You don't mind if I eat, do you?" Alex deliberately took a bite of his bagel, then placed a small piece on the ground beside him. He continued eating his own food, seemingly ignoring the morsel he'd left. Gray's nostrils flared, catching the scent. His ears, previously pinned back in fear, twitched forward briefly. It was a tiny change, but to Alex it was significant, the first sign of interest rather than fear. "You know," Alex continued his gentle monologue, "I've met many dogs like you. Dogs who've had to be tough because the world wasn't kind to them. But here's the thing, you don't have to be tough anymore. Not with me." As the morning wore on, Alex noticed subtle changes in Gray's behavior. The dog would occasionally sit, something he hadn't done earlier, though he remained vigilant. His eyes, while still wary, began to show flickers of curiosity. Linda returned as promised, parking quietly at the end of the drive. Alex gestured for her to stay back. "He's starting to process my presence," Alex explained in a low voice. "Any new person will reset his fear responses. We need to keep his world small and manageable right now." "What's your assessment?" Linda whispered. Alex watched Gray, who was tracking their conversation with tense attention. "He's not truly aggressive, he's terrified. Everything in his experience has taught him that humans are either absent or threatening. We need to show him another possibility exists." "How long do you think it will take to get him off the chain?" "Hopefully today. To heal his emotional scars? That's a longer journey." Alex's voice held both determination and compassion. "But first, I need some supplies from my truck." Moving with deliberate slowness, Alex retrieved his specialized equipment. A padded catch pole, though he hoped not to need it, thick gloves, bolt cutters, and most importantly, his rescue harness, a special device designed to safely restrain dogs while minimizing stress. As he arranged these tools nearby, he continued his running commentary to Gray. "Just getting some things ready here, buddy. Nothing to worry about. Everything I do is going to be slow and careful. The next phase would be critical." Alex needed to decrease the distance between them without triggering Gray's defensive responses. He began a pattern of movement, 3 small steps forward, then 2 steps back, always watching Gray's reaction threshold. "You're doing great, boy. See how I'm moving?"
No surprises, no tricks.
Just honest movement. When Gray showed signs of stress, Alex would immediately increase the distance again, teaching the dog that his discomfort would be respected. By early afternoon, Alex had managed to close the distance to about 6 feet, still outside Gray's chain radius, but close enough to begin the next phase of trust building. He sat again, this time close enough for Gray to see his facial expressions clearly. "You know what I see when I look at you?" Alex spoke softly. "I see strength. Takes incredible strength to survive what you've survived. But I also see something else. I see hope. Even if you don't feel it yet, I can see it there, waiting to come out." As the afternoon shadows began to lengthen, Alex knew they were approaching a critical window. Gray had been watching him for hours now, and fatigue would soon start affecting both of their judgment. It was time to move forward with the rescue attempt. "Linda," Alex called softly, "I need you to position yourself by the gate, but stay out of his direct line of sight. If something goes wrong, I might need backup, but right now your presence might spook him." Alex began the most delicate part of his approach. He'd been subtly tossing small pieces of high-value treats, bits of cooked chicken and cheese, in Gray's direction throughout the day, gradually creating a pattern. Each piece landed a little closer to Alex than the last, establishing a path that wouldn't force Gray to move suddenly or feel cornered. "That's it, buddy," Alex murmured as Gray cautiously sniffed at a piece of chicken about 4 feet away. "Nobody's going to hurt you. Not anymore." The chain rattled ominously as Gray moved, a sound that made Alex's heart ache. He could see now that the metal links had left permanent marks around the dog's neck, the fur worn away to reveal calloused skin beneath. "I know you don't trust easily," Alex continued his gentle monologue. 7 years is a long time to learn that the world isn't safe. But I'm going to show you something different today. With painstaking slowness, Alex reached for his rescue harness. Gray's ears flattened immediately, but he didn't growl, a significant improvement from the morning. Alex held the harness out, letting Gray see and smell it from a distance. See this? It might look scary, but it's going to help us get that heavy chain off you. Nothing bad is going to happen. Promise. The next few moments were crucial. Alex needed to get close enough to slip the harness over Gray's head. But one wrong move could undo hours of progress. He inched forward on his knees, keeping his body low and non-threatening. Gray's breathing quickened, but he held his ground. His eyes darted between Alex's face and hands, decades of instinct warring with the tiny seed of trust that had begun to grow. That's right, just like that, Alex encouraged, now close enough to reach out. You're so brave, Gray. So incredibly brave. The moment Alex's hand extended with the harness, Gray flinched but didn't lunge. His whole body trembled, but something, perhaps exhaustion, perhaps hope, kept him from retreating. With gentle movements, Alex managed to slip the harness over Gray's head. The dog froze, muscles tense, waiting for the pain that his experience told him would surely follow human touch. But pain didn't come. Instead, Alex's hands moved with careful precision, securing the harness while avoiding any sudden pressure on Gray's sensitive neck. "Good boy," Alex whispered, his own voice thick with emotion. "Such a good, brave boy." Now came the most challenging part, cutting the chain. The sound of metal tools often triggered fear responses in abused dogs, and the bolt cutters were particularly intimidating. Alex positioned himself so Gray could see exactly what he was doing. "I'm going to remove this chain now, buddy. There might be some scary noises, but I promise you're safe." The first snap of the bolt cutters made Gray jerk backward, but Alex had anticipated this and maintained a secure but gentle hold on the harness. It's okay," he soothed. "Almost done." With a final metallic crunch, the chain fell away. For the first time in 7 years, Gray was free. The change in the dog's demeanor was almost immediate. His eyes widened, and his head lifted slightly, as if the weight of the chain had been holding down more than just his body. The moments following Gray's release were filled with a profound silence. The dog stood completely still, as if unsure what to do with this new reality. His eyes darted around the yard, taking in the full expanse of space that had been denied to him for so long. "Take your time," Alex whispered, maintaining a gentle hold on the harness but allowing Gray to process this massive change. "The whole world just got bigger for you." Gray took a tentative step forward, then stopped, seemingly confused by the absence of resistance. The familiar weight and clank of the chain were gone. He took another step, then another, each movement becoming slightly more confident. Linda, still watching from her position by the gate, wiped tears from her eyes. In her 20 years of animal control work, she'd seen countless rescues, but there was something especially poignant about watching a dog discover freedom for the first time. Alex noticed Gray's gait was uneven. Years of restricted movement had affected his muscle development. "We'll need to get you to a vet," he murmured, making mental notes about the physical rehabilitation that would be necessary. The sun was starting to set when Alex decided it was time to move Gray to safety. The temperature was dropping, and they couldn't risk staying in this traumatic environment any longer. The challenge now was getting Gray into a transport crate. "Linda," Alex called softly, "could you bring the large crate from my truck? The one with the memory foam pad?" As Linda carefully approached with the crate, Gray tensed again, but his reaction was notably different from the morning. Instead of lunging and barking, he pressed himself against Alex's leg, the very human he'd been trying to attack hours earlier. "Look at that," Alex smiled, carefully keeping his voice calm despite his excitement at this show of trust. "You're already figuring out that humans can be safe." They positioned the crate nearby, door open, with a trail of high-value treats leading inside. Alex had specifically chosen a crate larger than necessary, wanting Gray to feel as unconstrained as possible. "See that, buddy? That's your ticket to a better life." Alex sat beside the crate, pretending to be interested in his phone while actually watching Gray's every move. The dog's nose twitched as he caught the scent of the treats, his hunger finally overcoming his fear. Step by tentative step, Gray approached the crate. He paused at the entrance, whiskers quivering as he sniffed the air. Alex held his breath, knowing this was another crucial moment. After being chained for so long, any form of confinement might trigger panic. To everyone's relief, Gray eventually entered the crate, drawn by both the treats and the soft bedding, perhaps the first comfortable surface he'd felt in years. Once inside, he turned in a circle, then settled down with a deep sigh that seemed to release 7 years of tension. "That's it," Alex praised softly, carefully securing the crate door. "Your new life starts now." As they loaded the crate into Alex's climate-controlled rescue vehicle, Gray remained calm, his eyes fixed on Alex through the crate's door. The trust beginning to form between them was fragile but real. The rehabilitation center was quiet when they arrived, which was exactly what Alex had planned. He'd called ahead to ensure the other dogs would be settled in their indoor kennels, creating a peaceful environment for Gray's arrival. "Welcome to your temporary home," Alex said softly as he parked in the sheltered bay. The center, which Alex had built specifically for challenging cases, sat on 5 acres of securely fenced land. The building itself was designed to feel more like a home than a kennel, with sound-dampening walls and gentle lighting. Gray remained calm in his crate during the short journey, though his eyes hadn't left Alex for a moment. It was as if he'd decided that this human was his lifeline in a world that had suddenly become much bigger and more complex. Dr. Sarah, the center's veterinarian, was waiting inside. She'd worked with Alex for years and understood the delicate nature of these cases. "How's our new friend doing?" she whispered, maintaining a respectful distance. "Better than expected," Alex replied. "But we need to move slowly. He's experienced more changes in the last few hours than in the past 7 years combined." They carefully moved Gray's crate to a specially prepared room, what Alex called the transition space. It was a comfortable area with a bed, water bowl, and plenty of soft blankets, designed to help traumatized dogs adjust gradually to indoor living. "I'm going to open the crate now," Alex announced, keeping his voice steady. "You can come out whenever you're ready, Gray. No pressure." The dog remained in his crate for nearly an hour after the door was opened, watching as Alex sat nearby, quietly reading a book. This was part of the process, showing Gray that humans could be present without being threatening. Finally, Gray took his first tentative steps into the room. His paws touched the carpet, another new sensation, and he paused, seemingly confused by the soft surface under his feet. "That feels different from dirt and chains, doesn't it?" Alex smiled. "Wait until you try the bed." Dr. Sarah had been observing through a window, making notes about Gray's physical condition. "We'll need to address those wounds around his neck," she murmured to Alex. "But I agree with your assessment. Let him settle first. Physical healing can wait a few hours." As night fell, Gray gradually began to explore his new space. Each discovery seemed to surprise him: the softness of the bed, the clean water in his bowl, the gentle warmth from the heating vents. He kept looking back at Alex, as if checking that this wasn't all going to disappear. "I'll stay here tonight," Alex told Dr. Sarah. "He needs consistency right now. Tomorrow we can start thinking about medical treatment and a rehabilitation plan." Alex spent that first night sleeping on a cot in Gray's room, wanting to be present for any signs of distress. Around midnight, he heard movement and opened his eyes to find Gray standing beside his cot, just watching. "Can't sleep, buddy?" Alex whispered. "That's okay. Everything's different now. But different can be good." To his surprise, Gray slowly lowered himself to the floor beside the cot. Not touching, not seeking attention, but choosing to be close to the first human who had shown him kindness. This, Alex knew, was the real beginning of Gray's healing journey. The physical chains were gone, but the psychological ones would take longer to break. Yet here, In this quiet moment of trust, Alex saw hope for the future. The next few weeks brought a series of small but significant victories. Each day revealed new aspects of Gray's personality as the layers of fear and defensiveness slowly began to peel away. The first major hurdle was Gray's medical examination. Dr. Sarah had waited patiently for 3 days, allowing the dog to become comfortable with her presence before attempting any hands-on treatment. During this time, she would simply sit in the room, occasionally tossing treats but never forcing interaction. "We'll need to sedate him minimally," she explained to Alex one morning. "Those neck wounds need cleaning and treatment, and I want to do a full health check." Alex nodded, knowing this was necessary but concerned about how it might affect their progress. "Let me stay with him through the whole process." The examination revealed the full extent of Gray's physical challenges. Beyond the obvious wounds around his neck, he had arthritis in his back legs from years of restricted movement, dental issues from poor nutrition, and several old injuries that had healed incorrectly. "The good news," Dr. Sarah said as she finished her examination, "is that none of these issues are insurmountable. With proper care, nutrition, and exercise, he should make a good recovery." As Gray emerged from the mild sedation, he found Alex right there, speaking softly and reassuringly. Instead of retreating in fear after the medical handling, Gray pressed closer to Alex, a response that brought tears to the experienced rehabilitator's eyes. The physical therapy began gradually. Alex would lead Gray on short walks around the indoor facility, helping him rebuild muscle strength and teaching him to walk normally without the weight of the chain. At first, Gray would only walk if Alex was right beside him, but gradually, his confidence began to grow. "Look at you go," Alex encouraged as Gray took his first tentative trot down the hallway. "You're remembering how to be a dog again." The breakthrough came during their 3rd week together. Alex had been sitting in the center's small garden area, reading reports, when he heard an unfamiliar sound. Looking up, he saw Gray playing with a squeaky toy, actually playing like a normal dog. The sight brought a lump to his throat. "I knew you had it in you," he whispered, watching as Gray tossed the toy and pounced on it awkwardly, his movements still stiff but undeniably playful. The other staff at the rehabilitation center began to notice changes too. Gray no longer growled when they passed his room. He started wagging his tail, tentatively at first, then with increasing enthusiasm, when familiar faces appeared. "He's like a different dog," Linda remarked during one of her regular visits to check on his progress. "I can hardly believe this is the same Gray who was lunging at us just weeks ago." But Alex knew their work wasn't finished. While Gray had made remarkable progress, he still showed signs of his trauma. Sudden movements could startle him into cowering, and he remained deeply suspicious of strangers, especially men. "He needs a very special kind of forever home," Alex explained during a staff meeting. "Someone who understands that his recovery is an ongoing journey, not a destination." The search for the perfect adopter would need to be careful and thorough. Gray had already endured enough trauma. His next move needed to be his last, to a home where he would be truly understood and cherished. As if sensing they were discussing his future, Gray padded over to where Alex sat and rested his head on Alex's knee, something he'd started doing recently when seeking reassurance. "Don't worry, buddy," Alex scratched behind Gray's ears, noticing how the fur was growing back nicely where the chain had worn it away. "We won't let you down. Your perfect family is out there, and we're going to find them." Winter had turned to spring by the time Alex felt Gray was ready for adoption. The physical changes were remarkable. His coat had grown in thick and healthy, his gait was almost normal, and his eyes now held a spark of joy that had been missing for so long. But it was the emotional transformation that truly amazed everyone who knew his story. The key, Alex explained to potential adopters, is understanding that Gray isn't broken. He's a survivor who needs patience, respect, and consistency. Several families had expressed interest, but Alex knew they needed someone extraordinary. Someone who would see Gray's occasional moments of fear not as setbacks, but as opportunities to build trust. Someone who would celebrate the small victories and understand the big picture. That someone turned out to be Margaret Sullivan, a retired librarian who lived alone in a quiet cottage with a securely fenced yard. She had reached out after hearing Gray's story from Linda, and from her first visit, something felt different. Margaret didn't try to approach Gray directly. Instead, she sat quietly in the center's common room, reading a book while Gray observed her from his favorite corner. After an hour, she simply said, "He's beautiful," and left. She returned the next day, and the next, each time just sitting quietly, sometimes reading aloud in her gentle voice. On her fourth visit, Gray approached her of his own accord, cautiously sniffing her hand before retreating to his safe space. "You've got all the time in the world, sweetheart," Margaret had said softly, not moving from her chair. "I'm not going anywhere." Alex watched these interactions with growing hope. Margaret's patience and quiet confidence were exactly what Gray needed. When she submitted her adoption application, it included a detailed plan for continuing Gray's rehabilitation, complete with notes about his triggers and comfort zones. "I've been reading everything I can find about helping traumatized dogs," she explained to Alex. "My cottage isn't fancy, but it's peaceful. There's a garden where he can sunbathe, and I'm home most of the time. Most importantly, I understand that love isn't enough. He needs structure and consistency too." The home check revealed a perfect setup. Margaret had already installed baby gates to create safe spaces, removed anything that might startle Gray, and even set up a cozy corner with a bed similar to the one he used at the rehabilitation center. After careful consideration and several more visits, Alex knew they had found Gray's person. The day Margaret came to take Gray home was emotional for everyone at the center. Alex helped load Gray's favorite toys, bed, and special anxiety wrap into Margaret's car. "Remember," Alex instructed, fighting back tears, "keep everything low-key for the first few weeks. Let him set the pace." Margaret nodded, her own eyes glistening. "We'll take it one day at a time." Gray seemed to sense the significance of the moment. He walked willingly to Margaret's car, but paused to look back at Alex, tail wagging softly. "Go on, buddy," Alex encouraged. "This is your new beginning." 3 months later, Alex received a photo that made his heart swell. It showed Gray sprawled on a sun-dappled porch, belly up, completely relaxed. Margaret's note read, "Today he chased butterflies in the garden and fell asleep in the sun. Sometimes when he's dreaming, his tail wags. I think he's finally home." Alex pinned the photo to his office wall, right next to his ever-growing collection of success stories. Gray's journey from a chained, fearful dog to a beloved family member reminded him why he did this work. Every dog deserved a chance at happiness, no matter how long or difficult the path might be. In the end, Gray's story wasn't just about breaking free from physical chains. It was about learning to trust, to play, to love again. It was about finding the courage to begin anew, and about the special humans who helped him along the way. "Sweet dreams, Gray," Alex whispered to the photo. "Sweet dreams."